Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. Nistu anagok natuikanatsuyi. My Blackfoot name is Holy Light That Shines Bright, and that was gifted to me by my auntie Ikinanchki, Dr. Lena Russell Heavy Shield, and her Blackfoot name is Gentle Singing Woman. So I'm very honored. It's good to be able to speak Blackfoot whenever I can, and I'm honored to be here today at the Galt to celebrate and start this project of the Kainai Women's Project. Was really where the idea happened. I'm very interested in beadwork, and so I had this idea. Carol and I would visit the Glenbow Museum, the archives there. When we went up there, our intention was to look at the beadwork from Ghana, and we had gone up there twice to visit them, to take some photographs, and it was a really emotional experience for me because on the one hand, it's really exciting to be able to see these objects and this work that's, over 100 years old. Many of these pieces, we don't know who they came from or who made them. They have tags on them, and some have the year, and perhaps some of them didn't even identify what nation, but we did know that they were Iiksisawaato'p, which is from the Blackfoot people. So in some way, I feel it's a responsibility to bring that knowledge, bring those images home for our young people and our community to visit with them and to reconnect, and even perhaps inspire new beaders in our community. I started beading when I just had moved home, and I started at the U of L, and so I grew up in the city in Calgary, and I started to learn more about my home community, the Blood Tribe, the stories, the landscape, my history, my genealogy. And a lot of that was interrupted, I guess, because of the historical processes of, colonization and the Indian residential school system. That generation of my moms and my aunts and uncles, those skills were, interrupted, but I felt really inspired, and I felt inspired to learn more and to self-teach, I guess, myself how to do beadwork. And my daughter was really young at the time, and I didn't grow up, I didn't grow up dancing, but I was inspired, and I wanted that for my daughter. And my grandmother, Isadaki, she would be going to powwows, and she would always get up and dance. And my uncle Jordan Heavy Shield too, he loved going to powwows. And it's sort of funny this last year, being with the pandemic happening, there's been no powwows and no gatherings, and that is the first time that our community, the Kainai community, we didn't have like Kainai Indian Days and powwow and rodeo. And so I think it's very appropriate that we are doing this exhibit now, to celebrate those women that have passed on, men and women, but also our young people that continue to dance and to make beadwork. So when we had gone to the archives, there's these drawers and drawers of these pieces of beadwork, bodices, moccasins, and there's these long aisles of these artifacts. And in a way, for me, I had kind of mixed emotions, because I do feel a strong sense of grief, similar to what I've been feeling this last year. And there's this profound sadness when you visit the archives. But there's the old people say ikakimat, which means you never give up, you keep trying hard. And that, I feel a responsibility to share that knowledge and to be a part of this project, because I think other people like myself and our younger generation have the right to visit with these pieces. The designs, the colors, the stories behind it, to have them lay somewhat dormant, to be able to visit with them and to bring them home, so to speak, is a really powerful thing. So my hope for this exhibit is to be able to invite the community, both from the blood tribe, but also newcomers, other people in Lethbridge, Southern Alberta community, to learn about the stories and the history of this place through visiting this work. I've had the honor to work with Dr. Carol Williams as the principal investigator for this project, which came through the Social Sciences Humanities Research Grant at the University of Lethbridge. And also, she has mentored Kalli Eagle Speaker, who is a wonderful student, also an artist, a dancer, who interviewed some women who do beadwork. And so our hope was to contrast some of these old style designs and stories related to the moccasins, to the medallions, the outfits, the regalia, and share them with, or connect them with the ones that we have brought from the archives, from both the Glenbow and also the Esplanade in Medicine Hat. Speaking of that, I had recently had a chance to visit the archives at the Esplanade, and there was a rattle there that belonged to one of my ancestors' heavy shield. And that was pretty an amazing thing for me, because to be able to be with my mom, Faye Heavy Shield, and she was doing some artwork sort of in response to the visit of the archives there, but to be able to hold that rattle, it was like I was visiting my own grandfather, or my great-great-grandfather, who I, never met, but certainly there was this energy and spirit that you feel when you interact with, when I was interacting with those pieces up there. So I did bring some of my own beadwork. I guess I could talk a little bit about Helen Manyfingers, the late Dr. Helen Manyfingers. I started to get to know her when I moved home, and she was just a great bead worker. She was my grandma's Isadaki, Adalaide Heavy Shield fox. They were sisters, and she gave me a lot of her beads, a lot of her beadwork, and she really inspired me to continue the craft.
Ukki, nistani danago itsayakana sayaki. Hello, my name is Kalli Eaglespeaker, and my Blackfoot name is Shining in the Water Woman. I am a 22-year-old Blackfoot student from the Blood Reserve, and I am nearly completed my Bachelor of Arts and Science degree with a double major in Psychology and Indigenous Studies and a minor in Women and Gender Studies. My journey to joining this project, titled Iiksisawaato'p Kainaiwa O'tookátákssin, Maana'pii niita'piitsitapii saatstakssin, began in the summer of 2020, where I was a student researcher working under the supervision of Carol Williams. Carol gave me the tools and knowledge I needed to begin conducting my own interviews with Kainaiwa beadworkers for my independent study with her titled Kainaiwa Beadwork, Modern and Historical Blackfoot Beadwork Practices. After working together for this study, Carol expressed her interest in hiring me to work with her for this art exhibit and offered me a position to work with her and Hali Heavy Shield as a researcher. I was able to provide input and insight into this project while being able to showcase my own beadwork and knowledge simultaneously. This project has given me a greater appreciation for being a Kainaiwa beadworker and being a scholar, while offering me the opportunity to implement my beadwork knowledge into academia. I am able to bridge my Western education and traditional knowledge while being able to research traditional Blackfoot knowledge and be able to give this work back into the community. For time immemorial, beadwork and designs have carried great significance through many generations, and it is remarkable that this knowledge is still alive today. Being able to showcase these historical beadwork pieces and also shows the knowledge of current beadworkers as it radiates through strength and the resilience of the Niitsitapi now and forever. Thank you.
My name is Carol Williams, and I'm on faculty at the University of Lethbridge in History and Women and Gender Studies. As a non-Indigenous person, the desire to learn about the importance of Kainaiwa women's beadwork motivated my collaboration with Hali Heavy Shield and Kalli Eaglespeaker in the organization of this exhibit. In English, the exhibit's title is We Visit with Kainaiwa Beadwork, A New Way and the Real Way of Design. One feature is based on the original research of Kalli Eaglespeaker. In summer 2020, Kalli conducted interviews with contemporary beaders. Her interviews and research about the history of Blackfoot beadwork, as considered by Indigenous scholars, addressed why contemporary Kainaiwa beadwork is flourishing. She made a convincing argument about the transmission of beadworking knowledge as a community strength. 6 interviews, inclusive of one on video with Kalli, who herself is a skilled beadworker, show how beadwork contributes to cultural resilience across generations and in community networks. What Kalli's research also taught me as a non-Indigenous woman is that the life of any beaded artifact begins as a creative act of labor by a committed individual. Beadwork requires advanced planning and the gathering of materials, prepared hide, great sums of sturdy thread, beads of various colors, sizes, and shapes, and various sizes of needles. Time is set aside by the beader for planning and production, according to the extent of the project. The stamina and patience, and most of all, the skill it takes to produce complex bodices, vests, belts, cuffs, and leggings is breathtaking. Each one of these beaded objects represents many hours of intense labor. I might say, therefore, that beadwork embodies a history of labor. The beadwork can deliver sophisticated ideas about aesthetics and design, to anyone who takes time to contemplate their construction. The dedication of the beadwork is evident in carefully executed design and in the effort and commitment granted each piece. In her essay, Beadwork as an Indigenous Research Paradigm, Kainai scholar Tiffany Pratt discusses how relationships with others across generations are generated by the practices of beadworking. As Pratt describes, quote, "Beading has taught me the importance of sharing and giving. These principles are at the core of beading. My mother shared with me her knowledge of beadwork, which consequently are the lessons from my ancestors that have been handed down to her, and that knowledge has been transferred to me, and I have a responsibility to share this knowledge with others. I share it with my family, I share it with my tribe, and I share it with my children," end quote. That's Tiffany Pratt. It is in this spirit of sharing that this exhibit was designed. We hope in outreach programming others will take time to share their experiences of beadworking. As a historian, I've been trained to acknowledge the historical value conveyed by objects produced by people or industrial manufacturing. In history scholarship, these objects are commonly identified as material artifacts. Yet the beaded work that Hali Heavy Shield and I encountered in the many wood storage drawers at the Glenbow Museum did not appear static or inanimate as the term artifact suggests. What surprised me on our first visit was the compelling and mesmerizing force of the beadwork. Access to the Glenbow storage gave us an opportunity to witness a remarkable range of beading expertise and innovative design. This knowledge was possessed and maintained by the people despite decades-long federal government prohibitions against cultural and ceremonial sovereignty of Indigenous people in Canada. I also experienced intense emotion seeing so many beaded pieces sitting dormant and en masse. They seemed abandoned, detached from their makers, separated from the land base where the work originated, and outside of the community circuits of trading, gifting, and exchange. While I intellectually understand the values of conservation, I also imagine that to share these works more widely may enable greater historical literacy. By witnessing the breadth and skill this work represents, the viewer comprehends more deeply and with greater respect the monumental legacy of women's work as creators of items valued in everyday and ceremonial life. In storage, however, the beadwork resides largely silent and unseen, and access is somewhat limited. Although the Glenbow is receptive to prearranged visits from individuals like Hali Heavy Shield and I, and welcomes anyone attached to Indigenous communities, for the most part, the beadwork does not circulate as widely as it deserves. Therefore, using some of the photographs Hali and I took in the storage area, we selected a small sample and featured these in the exhibit as a means to hurdle the barriers of limited access for those who cannot get to the museum. The wall of photographs assembles a modest selection of beadwork photographs alongside some historical portraits of Kainai people in beaded garments. Together, this photographic assemblage exemplifies a very small part of the grand wealth of beadwork produced over many years.